Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Husqvarna Viking Facebook Live. My name is Kathy Fromme, and today we're going to talk about the felting technique that we use in our embroidery machines. So I'm happy that you've joined me. If you'd like to share in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be wonderful. And also let us know, have you tried the felting technique, or is it something you haven't ventured into yet? We would really appreciate your feedback on this. And just a reminder, in the background, we have Meredith, Amy, and Ryan helping us out with the chat. So during our live today, please put your comments or questions in the chat, and they will feed the chat to me, and I will be happy to answer those questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Once again, I'm Kathy Fromme, joining you on today's Facebook Live for Husqvarna Viking, and our topic is the felting kit. So our felting kit is available for groups 7, 8, and 9 machines. So if you have one of those machines that takes the green bobbins, the green Husqvarna Viking bobbins, or the rainbow bobbins, that would be a group 7 machine. So you would buy the felting kit that comes in this package right here. It has the paisley, green, and pink on it, and this is for group 7 machines. If your machine takes the bigger, 30% larger epic bobbins, those are the blue bobbins, then you will purchase the kit designed for that machine. And again, it still has a paisley on it, I know, but it's all green. And if I put them side by side here, you can see that they are different. Again, this one here, all green paisleys, that is group 9. Anything that takes the epic blue bobbin, you'll purchase this kit. If you are using the green Husqvarna Viking bobbins or the rainbow bobbins, you're going to use this felting kit. And these are available from your local dealer and store. So this is where you can pick these 2 kits up. We're going to talk about what's in the kit today as well. All right, stay there. Okay, great. Alrighty, so I think I'm going to talk about what's in the kit first, and let me, oh my goodness, what's showing up here? Sorry about that. Let me go switch my camera here, and in just a minute we will take a look at a close-up of the machine. Now, as you can see, let me do a little zoom for you. So hold on. There we go. I already have the felting kit attached to my machine, but I have my secondary felting kit where I have all the pieces parts, and I can show you those parts close up and explain how they work. So first off, in the kit is sure I have you in focus there. You have what we call the felting bobbin, and that I already have in my machine. That is like a little cup. It replaces your bobbin so that the machine's low bobbin sensor does not go off. Believe me, if you try doing this without this, your bobbin sensor will go off. A second advantage to using this is that it cuts down on the amount of fiber that goes into your bobbin case. All right. Now the felting foot that I have attached to the machine, and here's what it looks like before it's attached to the machine. All right. It has its own ankle, so you totally remove the ankle screw and place this on the machine. And it works a lot like a finger guard, because the needles we use are a barbed needle. Now that I would have a hard time showing you close up, but I'll show you what the package looks like. It is a green package, and there are 5 needles in each kit. They last a really long time, and the needle is very short, and it's barbed, and that barbed needle is what pushes our fibers for felting. Now, I know that doesn't make a lot of sense yet, but it will in just a minute. And I'm going to put a barbed needle in a needle holder so that you can see. Can you see how short that is? Make sure you use your needle inserter tool to put your needle in and out of the machine. It's going to make a big difference. You do not want to poke your finger with this because it is, like I said, it's barbed and it's very sharp. So the sequence I would do things is I would put my little replacement felting bobbin in, and then I would insert my needle and then put on it's actually called the felting foot, believe it or not, but it wraps around that needle and protects you from getting poked. And it helps again to reduce the fibers. Now, the other part here, this gray plate, this is what one looks like when it's not attached. These are different for the two size kits, for the size 7 kit and the size 9 kit, for again the bobbin size. It's the placement of the hole for the needle in relationship to your feed cover plate here. So I always use my single hole plate when I'm doing felting. Again, anything I can do to reduce getting extra fuzz into that bobbin area is a good thing. So because I have machines that take both felting kits, I actually wrote on the back side of my plates a 7 on my 7 machine, and this one has a 9 written on it. So that's how I tell the difference. The other parts are totally interchangeable, but this plate, it's important that you have the right plate on or your needle will not pass through the hole. So that's the part, those are the components of the actual kit. Let's talk about our felting technique. Okay. So we're back here in front of my Designer Epic 2 screen. And this technique, this felting kit, actually is an embroidery technique. So let me wake up my machine here. And you can see that I'm in my Joy of Sewing Advisor. Here I've touched it by touching the icon at the very top. And I'm in embroidery. I can tell what mode I'm in because it is turned blue. And when you open up your Joy of Sewing Advisor into embroidery, it comes up with the basic embroidery techniques. If I scroll left or right, I can see all kinds of other techniques that I can do in embroidery mode. And some of these I've shared with you in the past. Today, we are going to come over to felting embroidery. And we can see here that there are 3 types of felting embroidery. We have freestanding embroidery, felting with multi-layer, and felting that's a single layer. So we are going to start with single layer felting embroidery. So I'll go ahead and choose that technique. And I'm going to make my instructions, which loaded here at the bottom of my screen. I know I'm a little bit out of your range. I'm going to make them full screen. So go ahead and make that full screen. If you've used the Joy of Sewing Advisor before, you know how helpful this feature is on our Husqvarna Viking machines. It's like having a teacher with you. I can't come to your house. I'm really sorry about that, but the Joy OS Advisor can help you. And by the way, if you are working with a machine that doesn't have the Joy OS built into it, say you have a Topaz machine and it has the color touchscreen, but it doesn't have the Joy OS, guess what? On your smartphone, you can get to your MySewNet app. And in the MySewNet app, you can actually open the Joy of Sewing Advisor. So download that app for free at your app store for both Android and Apple products. Each step will take you through like the materials that you need, how to prepare and set up your machine, selecting the embroidery, doing the stitch out preparing your hoop, and then removing your hoop. So everything you need to know is right here in our JoyOS Advisor. Another reason I like to start teaching about a new technique through the JoyOS Advisor is that by selecting a specific felting technique, it isolates the designs that are in this machine that work for this technique. So at the top, there are 4 designs. I'm going to load this design right here, design 2, and then minimize. So you can see that it loaded a design that is suitable for this single layer technique. I'm going to minimize my instructions for a moment just so you can see the full screen. It's telling me what size hoop I need. Of course, I can change that to the hoop I want to use. And I'm just reaching here for my prepared hoop. So I like to use different hoops for different projects. And I am going to show you the 180 by 130 hoop here in just a moment. So I have changed my hoop size on my screen to match the hoop I have prepared. And I'm ready to go over to stitch out, and I'm going to switch my camera for you so that you'll be able to see the needle at the machine. Okay. And I have prepared my metal hoop with a layer of just Aqua Magic Stabilizer with magnets. Now this is a single layer technique, and I probably really don't need to have the stabilizer, but I'm going to put it on here anyway. And the single layer technique doesn't require anything other than the fabric in which you want to felt or do this single layer technique. So I will attach my hoop and then lay my fabric on top of my hoop. Now, you're saying, wow, that's the wrong side of the fabric. And you're correct, it is. Felting happens from the wrong side, no matter if you're doing single layer technique or the freestanding technique or multi-layer technique. You are always working from the wrong side. And I know that feels a little weird, but that's how it works. So I'm just replacing my magnets here. Excuse me while I reach in and take care of this just to anchor my fabric in place. Alrighty, so I have that ready to go. I'm going to acknowledge that I've attached my hoop, and you know what? I just made a very common error in that I did not choose the 180 by 130 with an M. So we will just go back, retouch my hoop, and do 180 by 130 M, and touch go. All right, go back through my checklist. I'm also going to do one other thing, which I had pre-set up, but I'm just going to verify for you. Let me flip over for you. I've gone into settings, and I want to ensure that for embroidery foot type, I've changed it to floating foot, which indeed I have. All right, that floating foot, that would be your R foot that comes with your machine. The felting foot operates like the floating foot. So make sure you go into your settings and switch it from sensor Q to floating foot. Okay. Switch it back here. And I'm going to go ahead and start stitching. So I know it's not terribly exciting to watch the felting foot work, especially on this type of design, but it's really working hard. It's just stitching back and forth, back and forth. I'll just let it run for a few more seconds, and then I will show you what a design done in this manner looks like. So we'll just let that run, and I'm going to come back to you here. I think you'll be able to see this much better. So this is a denim shirt, and let me hold this. There we go. You can see that I've done a design that's sort of a floral leaf swirl type design. I've done a pattern on the lower right hand side of the blouse and then on the upper left. So I have a pair of designs. I'm not trying to get far enough back for you to see that very well, but I'll have to take a still picture for you and post that still picture. See it there. Now this is the right side, and of course, like I said, you do the felting from the wrong side. So this is what it looks like in the wrong side. This looks like somebody put a lot of holes in it. It's sort of like a distressing technique. And if you're not into big giant holes in your jeans or your denim, this would be a more moderate way to put something decorative on your clothing for that. So let me go ahead and stop the machine so I can talk over it. And Meredith, do we have any questions on this? Take a look to see. All right, nothing yet, which is fine. So I'm going to come over next and let's talk about the other types of felting. Sorry about that, guys. Just want to make a switch here and come back over to my machine. I'm going to just cancel this design and take my hoop off so that it will clear. And if you hear some extra noises in the back that are not sewing machine related, we're having a little remodeling done at my home, and so I apologize for the noise. They were supposed to be done by now. But things don't always work out the way you intended, right? Let's go back to Joy OS again. And we are in embroidery. We're still in our felting technique. And now let's look at the multi-layer technique. So we have 4 different designs in this group. All right. And let's try zooming here for you guys. I know it doesn't show up great on screen, but we have 4 different embroidery designs. I'll just pick this design since I know it'll show up pretty good for you on screen. And with this technique, it operates a little bit differently. So our setup is with our hoop. We hoop our fabric with the wrong side facing us, okay? Much like I had the denim. But instead of just having the denim, I now put a layer of something on top of my fabric. And this second layer can be a fiber, it could be yarn, it could be fabric, it could be felt. It can pretty much be anything you want to try felting. Whatever it is, the felting needles are going to push it down through your fabric, and that will become the design on the right side. In the list of materials, you can see here that you have your base fabric and then your felting fabric. So let's jump up ahead here, and so I can show you how you place your fabric. So for this example, I am once again going to just use, whoops, sorry about that, guys. Just use the metal hoop, and I have some various pieces of fabric and felt squares here that I can show you. Let me minimize this. Again, I'm going to change my hoop to that metal hoop. And this time I'll remember to choose the 180 by 130 with the M after it so that I won't have that little mistake again. Go ahead and click through everything. And let me just change over my camera now that I have that set. Back over to the needle. I'm going to zoom out a bit so you can see my workspace. So here again is my denim right side down. And for ease of use today, I'm just going to show you how this is done with a piece of felt. Everyday craft store felt. Now, if your felt has a hard finish on it, that might take a multiple embroideries to passes through in order to get a good look. But you can just run this design through your fabric, and what we'll see on the right side will be the yellow. I'm going to let that run for just a minute or two. Excuse me. Okay, so I told you that we can use a lot of different materials to do felting. I'm going to stop that machine so you can hear me above it. And one of those materials can be roving. And I'm lucky that I have a store that I like to shop at that is actually a yarn shop. But there's the partners who own it also raise their own sheep and their own alpaca. And they harvest the wool and spin it. They also sell just the roving. So I have a really good place to get roving from. However, you can't always get every color you might want, although I have a nice assortment of colors there. Yarn can be a great thing to use, and you could use it whole in strands, or you could use it and turn it into roving yourself. Now, all right, how in the world does that work? Well, it's a little easier than you think. And I'm going to have to bring it back to me so that I can show you this technique. What you need to do is go to your favorite pet store or, mass merchant and buy yourself a couple of dog brushes that are designed for the undercoat. Buy 2 of them. You're going to need 2. So if any of you remember like Laura Lingle, Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls, and they carded wool and they spun and all of that. Well, these dog brushes take the place of carding paddles, or they're sometimes referred to as carders or paddles. How this works is you take yarn. So I just have some yarn from the craft store. I try to find yarn that's already kind of loosely twisted. It doesn't have a high twist to it, so it's already relatively flat. It just is a lot quicker to turn it into your own roving. And I'll cut it into lengths. And this is a little bit long, so I'm going to cut that in half. So that's about 5-6 inches. I'm going to lay it on one of my paddles, just so my yarn is at the end. And then I'm taking my second paddle. So I'm going to hold this one flat or stationary and take my second paddle and I'm going to brush it across. Now I find it a little easier, a little hard to do on camera, and I'm just doing a brushing and I'm kind of pulling it up and away. And you can start to see that the fibers are becoming loose. Now, when I get a few fibers, I'm going to lift those away and continue brushing. pull those away. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop and pull these fibers off. See how nice that comes off? Just set those aside. You can see what I have left on my main brush. Maybe if I hold it up this way, you'll get a good view. And when I get that far, I'm just going to move my yarns down and continue brushing. It's really very easy. It's kind of therapeutic to do this. Don't wear a sweater when you're doing it, however. I did that once and I ended up with fuzz all over me. So it actually comes pretty nice. And if you have friends that would like to do this as well, I want to show you this. This skein of yarn had 120 yards on it. And just for you guys, I measured out 10 yards. So this is 10 yards of yarn. Nice little ball of yarn. And I brushed out 10 full yards of yarn, and I have this big puff of roving. So you can see from this, you get this. That's a lot of roving. Now this is very loose. It's not tightly wound or anything, but you can make several embroidery designs out of just a few yards of your yarn. And I'm just going to put all this aside for you. So I hope that helps you expand what you can felt with. Don't be afraid to try different fibers. You can even mix colors to make your own blends. You could add some sparkly threads in there. A lot of different things to really enhance your projects. So let's go back and see if we felted enough of our yellow on our denim to see a result. And we can start to see a little bit of our pattern come through. Most felting embroidery designs will have multiple color stops, and they are usually, if it's just a straight felting design with no stitches, no thread stitches, it'll be multiple needles. So I'm on needle 1 here, and needle 2 is exactly the same needle. It's just the stitches are different. So I'm going to zoom in here for you and show you in needle 1, the stitches are forming a little square crosshatch on an angle. If I switch to needle 2, which is still felting, the stitches, and I can show you an even better close-up if I zoom in on my embroidery design. Do you see how my stitches are very linear? And then we have a satin edge around the design. Many felting designs have that little satin edge around it, and that helps to finish off the design. So you might have 2 or even 3 quote colors or color stops, but they will be with your felting needles, and it will just separate out the angle of the stitch. So there's no needle to change, unlike cutwork needles that are color coded with 4 colors for the 4 angles of cut. All of your felting needles are identical. They're all the same barb needles. It's just they separate out the stitch pattern for that step. Okay. Alrighty. Now, let's go back. So we've talked about 2 types of felting, and let me check on questions. Let me see here. Okay. One question is, do I use wool yarn? And the pink yarn that I was carding is indeed a wool yarn. I have also done wool blend yarns. I have done acrylic yarns, different fibers. I put different yarns together to make my own roving. It all works. It's just the more twist the yarn has, the longer it's going to take you to get your roving to do the roving style felting. Okay. Let's see. How long is the life of a felting needle? Well, I've used mine until they actually break. So I've never seen a recommended time. I figure if it's not felting well and if I'm not getting good fiber coming to the top side, or in this case, the bottom side of my project, then I will go ahead and change out that needle. And you can purchase just the needles as a replacement. You do not have to buy a whole new kit, but our dealers do sell the felting needles on their own, so you can get a replacement. No worries on that. Alrighty, let's take a look now at our third type of felting. So once again, I'm going to leave my current work and let me get my hoop out of the way. Let me just set that hoop aside and another hoop prepared for you. I'm going to clear my design off my screen, return to my Joy OS. Make sure you can still see that. And talk about freestand felting that is freestanding. This is a lot of fun. So, whoops. Well, we have our Joy OS is very flexible. In case you didn't realize it, you can keep your instructions up and running throughout the embroidery process, so you can always refer to the next step. And what I just did then is I docked my directions over to the right. But they can be docked on the left, the top, or the default is to the bottom. So that's what just happened there. You can also minimize. The minimize icon is to the very far right on that toolbar. And that will minimize your instructions so you can see all of your controls at the bottom of your screen. So thankfully, our Joy OS works with us and not against us, and it will, you can work with it any way you choose to work with it. Okay, so freestanding felting. Again, our materials are, we need the felting embroidery set, and we need obviously a hoop and scissors, and we need wool roving or felt or another fabric will work as well. And we need a stabilizer this time that is, my preferred is Aqua Magic, and I think most of us who've done this prefer Aqua Magic. It does need to be a water-soluble stabilizer. And Aqua Magic is more like a fabric than our clear Inspira stabilizer. So I would recommend sticking with the Aqua Magic. And again, we install our kit and we have we select our embroidery, and then the stitch out happens with preparing your hoop. Now, because we are doing this as a freestanding, we don't need any fabric in our hoop. So I prepared a hoop with just Aqua Magic in it. And my Aqua Magic was a little skinny, so I put a second layer to give myself a little width. And then we place our wool roving. I'm going to swap cameras. I'd like to have dual cameras. Wouldn't that be nice, Amy and Meredith, if I can have dual screens running at once? I'm going to place my roving on top of my Aqua Magic hoop. I'm going to use a little bit of my pink, and I have some purple roving as well. So I can mix my colors, all right? And I'm just going to kind of spread this out, kind of mash it together.
Yeah, I'm just moving.
All right. And I think I'll put the pink down. I've experimented. I have a couple swatches to show you of different colors when you layer the colors differently, okay? Now, this roving, if I were to go ahead and put this under my foot like so, this roving is going to get caught everywhere. It's going to be a nightmare. So what we do is we anchor that down with another piece of Aqua Magic stabilizer on top. We've already set our machine up for the felting kit, which means there's no thread in my bobbin and I don't have a regular needle in. So I can't use my base feature to do that. However, if I had a second machine up and running, I could certainly have one machine set up to baste around the hoop and hold that in place. Instead, I'm just going to pin it in place. So turn this around, and I am pinning, I'll show you a little close up here in a minute. I'm pinning well away from my design, and I'm pinning Aqua Magic the top layer to the bottom layer around the perimeter of the hoop. So you can see that. See how I have that pinned up here, and then down here I have it pinned into the excess Aqua Magic that I left out of the hoop. So that'll hold it tight. Okay, and so that will help control my roving from going anyplace. Now back here at the machine, I've placed my roving and added my water-soluble stabilizer. And now I am ready to embroider my felting blocks. So let's go ahead and just dock those directions. Oops, there we go. And I'll pick just this little purple flower here. Touch and hold to load that and minimize. Now this design wants me to use my 80 by 80 hoop. And I do have the 80 by 80 hoop. I love it. It's a little 3-inch size hoop. It's perfect for small things, and it really saves on stabilizer. However, I did not get that out today. And I'm using my 120 by 120 regular hoop. So I'm going to select that hoop. I'm going to leave this design in the center, touch go. Again, looking through my checklist, I can verify the hoop size and that I have the machine set for the floating type foot, and touch continue. So my arm is coming into place and I will attach my hoop. But before I come over to the embroidery camera again, I want to share with you that sometimes, well, let me switch and I'll switch back. Sometimes this can be a little puffy underneath the foot. In the settings of our machine, we can adjust what's called the pivot height of the floating foot. So if I touch temporary embroidery settings, I'm going to scroll up here and you can see embroidery foot type. I have floating selected, and to the right of the floating, this is the pivot height adjustment. So I can adjust this for special techniques and accessories that don't use the spring foot or the Q foot. And this will give me more room between my fabric and my presser foot. So I'm going to increase my pivot height to about 3. I've discovered that works pretty well for the amount of roving I usually put down. And I'm just going to touch that to minimize that setting. And before we move over to the machine, I'm going to show you that we do indeed have 3 needles, plus we have some thread. And I'm going to tell you how we deal with that also. So let's take a look at the machine as the machine stitches out. And once again, it's not terribly interesting to watch the stitch out. The fun happens when you take it off. All right, so while that's running, I'm going to check on our questions here. We had a question about the rove. Does the roving stay in place? And I think I've answered that with putting a layer of Aqua Magic on top of it. So that, again, is going to keep the roving from getting caught on the foot. Several questions about that topic. So if that answer doesn't clarify, Please let Meredith and Amy and Ryan know that you need another clarification on that. I'm happy to explain. Next question. What do you do with the extra felt once the design is complete? Does it pull away easily? Okay, so I'm going to show you about how you clean up a felting design here in just a moment. And then the question comes up, once you're embroidering, if the design has multiple color changes, would it be faster to merge all colors so the machine does not stop? Well, you certainly could do this. However, um, you could also use these layers of the felting needle to your advantage. So if you'd like to start, excuse me, if you'd like to start off with a thinner layer of roving, and just do color one, then you could stop and add another contrast color at that point, or even put a piece of fabric or felt to use the second needle for. You'll get very interesting effects when you layer in that manner. So try it both ways and see what you want it to look like. Okay, so that step is finished, and it says, change from spiral needle. I'm going to take this off the hoop so you can see here what's come through. So this is only one pass of 3 that this particular embroidery design has. And get you a better zoom here so that you can see that. There we go. So you can see that that's all going in pretty much one direction. So we'll get a lot of additional texture and felting when we do the other 2 layers of felting. Excuse me, just a moment. Okay. I think I can best show you this on my other camera. I think I have roving in my throat. Alrighty, guys. So let's come back over here. And let me show you some of my different little flowers I've created and the different techniques I've done. So this flower and this flower are both, there we go. These 2 flowers are done with strictly roving, and I used a yellow roving, and this is the side that was down. So this was in my hoop this way. You can see some remnants of my Aqua Magic on the back covering my roving. This is the right side, and you're like, wow, how did you get that thread on there, right? So not all freestanding felting designs or felting designs in general have actual thread as well as part of the design, but many do. What you do for designs with thread is you fill a bobbin with the same thread that you're using on top. So in this case, I use this magenta Robeson Anton, and I put that same thread in my bobbin. Once the 3 steps of the felting were done, so I had 3 felting steps, then it prompted me to put in a regular needle and put in my thread. And the directions on screen do indeed tell you exactly to do this. So if you're going to do the freestanding felt for the very first time, I'd recommend that you use the JoyOS Advisor either in the machine or, again, use the app. The free app is there for you. It gives you all the same information. So when it comes up to the thread step, then you're going to take off the felting foot and remove the barbed needle. Take out the little felting bobbin and replace it with your regular Q foot. Put your embroidery thread in your bobbin and in top, and go into your settings and change from floating to the Q foot. Okay. And then you will have the same thread color on the right side and the wrong side. Once you take this off your hoop, you will have extra fiber around it. And I'll grab another hoop behind me and show you that. You can unhoop everything and you can just pull the loose fiber from the back side away and then trim it with scissors. And to get rid of your Aqua Magic, you can just dunk it in water or spritz it with a spray bottle. You could leave the Aqua Magic in it and do some shaping of your flower and let it dry like that. So you can use it to your advantage. If you don't want to shape it at all, you could just rinse it thoroughly and get all your Aqua Magic out. Now, I experimented with some different variations. So first off, here is, let me get a good angle for you. Here, you're still seeing the Aqua Magic. That was the hooped layer Aqua Magic. And I put yellow roving. So it was this roving here down on my Aqua Magic. And then I put a piece of pink, a felt square on top. I wanted to see what the mixed layers would do. And it's actually quite nice that I have some subtle color changes to it. So this plus a pink felt square gave me this design. The outside of this design is like a satin edge, and it makes a nice finish when you trim it. And here's one that I've trimmed. However, this is done strictly with roving. So this is just plain roving. The one that I added the felt on the back, the sheet of felt, is a little stiffer. It's got more body to it, which is not surprising. And then I thought I'd take my experiment one step further and use 2 shades of yellow for my felting and put the gold felt down first and the yellow felt on top, and then do the reverse. So this one has the yellow felt first and then the gold. Whoops. And I get a very similar, but in person you can tell a subtle difference. And the difference up here is that my little cut off poor flower, I didn't realize I didn't have felt all the way to the edge. But you know what? Not every flower petal in nature is perfect. So I'll just like tuck it behind another petal and no one will be the wiser that happens. Okay. All right. And let me see. You wanted to see the denim piece. Let's see how much we have running on that. Grab that hoop. Again, this is the machine side. So you can see the little impressions that the felt is making. And this is the wrong side. Now, know that this is going to come, this Aqua Magic will come away and it will look much different. And again, this only has one part of a pass on it, so it's not a lot of color yet. And I also experimented with the single layer. Oh, let me find my sample, which just fell on the floor first. So the shirt that I did with the just essentially the distressing, I did on a piece of fleece. So this is a piece of fleece, no stabilizer, no Aqua Magic, no roving, no anything. Just put the fleece down in my hoop. I used my metal hoop for this. And you can see the difference. I essentially embossed that fleece, just a little subtle effect. And this design is not it didn't start out to be a felting design. It's one of the fabric decorator designs from the MySewNet library. Although there are, a couple hundred felting designs in the MySewNet library. But I took this design, all of the part that's flattened down were little stitches, almost like a stipple stitch. And I took it into my software and I replaced the thread needle. It's really quite simple. You bring the design up and you change the thread from thread to the felting needle, and it will just cause it to do this embossing instead. So that could be a really fun technique to expand on in the future. All right, now let's take a look at our flowers, because it is May and it is Mother's Day and it's spring, and hopefully our weather's going to encourage some blooms to happen. We have plenty of rain in April, so we can get our May flowers. But these are different felting designs that are either in the machine or in our MySewNet library that you can download, that are done with felting. And they're a combination of felt squares and roving. Like this blue one has both roving and a felt square on it, so it's a little bit fuzzier than the others. And you can see my pretty little butterfly here has a lot of thread detail on it. And this little bouquet came to me from one of our store managers who made this as a favor. I was recently at her store doing an event. And I asked her if I could use it for my live, and she'd be happy to share it with us. And her name is Karen. So thank Karen for me for allowing me to share her beautiful work. And she just put her flowers on chenille stems. So this is the back side of it. And her intention was it could be worn as a corsage for Mother's Day, or you could pin it onto a wreath. There's so many different things that you could use a little bouquet for. So you could do exactly the same thing. Whether you use roving, which these yellow flowers are all done with roving, or you use a combination of roving and fabric or felt squares to make freestanding felting. Okay. Let's see. Please tell about the free app again. Okay. So if you go into your app store, your Google or your Apple store, and you search for MySewNet, let's see here if I can. Sometimes these things do change. So I'm going to start by searching for Husqvarna Viking, and then I'll show you my screen and show you what that looks like. Husqvarna Viking, Joy OS Advisor. Okay. So the icon right here, it's a little sewing machine. That's going to be your Joy OS Advisor. And honestly, I'm not sure if I stayed logged in or not. Nope, I didn't stay logged in. So I won't be able to show you that. But it is exactly like you see it on the machine. And you can look at all the techniques and all the how-tos. And you know what? There's even the basics are on there. How to thread the machine, how to put in a zipper, how to sew on a pocket or a button. All kinds of easy techniques. Let me see if I'm possibly signed in on my other phone here. Let's see here. Nope, I need to get signed in. So, but go to your app store and take a look for Joy OS Husqvarna Viking, and you'll find it. No worries. Okay. All right. Here's another question. Could you multi-layer the two yellow flowers? So I'm going to interpret your question to say, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you want to make these two on top of one another, if that's what you're referring to. If that's the case, if I laid the two embroidery designs together, I would want to make sure that my smaller one stitched first and my larger one stitched last, so it ended up looking like this. So I'd have to think, a little bit backwards on my machine. I haven't tried it, but it sounds like an interesting idea. I kind of like the fact that you could create them separately, and then put them together perhaps with another little tacking stitch to hold them together. And then you'd have some additional dimension. You can kind of get this to look like a daffodil if you shaped it, gave it a little bit more of shaping as you let it dry. Okay, but certainly I wouldn't be opposed to trying layering these two designs together and see what comes out in one pass of embroidery. All right. Other questions? Let me make sure. Can you machine launder felting projects afterwards? I would take care, if you do use the wool fibers or any wool fabric to felt with, I would treat them with a hand wash, a delicate wash, and probably let them air dry. I have indeed washed this blouse. I wear this blouse occasionally, and I do wash it, and it just makes this look nicer. So the more it gets laundered, the more distressed it becomes, and I really like the look. However, I do wash it on the gentle cycle in my washing machine. So let's see. So I think that about wraps it up for me. So please join us for our next live. Our next Husqvarna Viking live is May 17th at 2 p.m. Central Time. That's going to be with our educator, Dee Marie. She is going to do pin tucks for the modern world. That should be a lot of fun and exciting. And then next week on May the 10th, our My Sonnet Live will be with Mickey Hudson. She's our software guru. Get to know the background wizard and assistant. So please join us for those two lives, May 10th with Mickey Hudson for My Sonnet, and May 17th with Dee Marie for Pin Tucks. And those are both held at 2 p.m. Central Time. All right. And one last question popped up. Let me take that question. When you change the foot height, does it return to default? Not within that embroidery design. So you would need to adjust it. Now, once you turn your machine off and turn it back on again, if you're choosing sensor Q foot, that will default back out for the floating foot. The pivot height will return back out. But it's going to stay at that adjusted height until you end that embroidery session. Okay. All right. If you have further questions or things come up, if you watch the replay, please go ahead and put your comments in, and we'll take a look at them over the next week or so and answer any questions. Have a great afternoon, everyone.